The alien mother smiled. You raised my daughter. Now you are tied to me. The night Jonah found the little girl, she was half buried in seaweed. Her skin held a tide glow, and gill lines fluttered at her throat. He carried her up the cliff to the lighthouse and named her Leary after the sound gulls made around the lantern glass. 6 years passed. The townsfolk learned to look twice and then kindly. Leary learned to stack stones, ride the old mare, and read. When storms chewed the shoreline, she hummed a note that calmed the waves. Jonah taught her knots and tea and not to apologize for being alive. On the evening the sky tore open. The village was hung with lanterns. A seam of light stitched into a sail and settled beyond the kelp beds. From the silver vessel stepped a tall woman in a coat of woven light. Her eyes were the exact color of Leary's. I am Sariah of the Valen, she said. I have crossed salt and vacuum to find my child. Leary's fingers found Jonah's. You came, she whispered, wonder mixing with fear. Sariah's gaze softened, then set with a captain's discipline. She spoke to Jonah with formality. You sheltered her. For that, I owe what cannot be counted. But by the laws of both our peoples she must return to her kin. They met in the lighthouse kitchen. She has a home, Jonah said. She does, Sariah replied, glancing at drawings on the wall. Boats and constellations, a family of 2, then at Leary's rope-rough hands. And she has a lineage not finished being written. Leary's voice was small. Do I have to choose? A siren coughed across the bay. The salvage guild's trawlers nosed from the fog with cranes, smelling profit. Sariah stood. They will claim treaty violations. If they seize my ship, they will seize her as evidence. There is a way to halt them, but I cannot do it alone. What do you need? Jonah asked. An anchor stone, our proof of lineage and guardianship. It lies in the wreck under Cutter's Point. Cutter's Point was a knife of rock and current. Jonah knew the tides as he knew Leary's temper. They went at once. Jonah in his skiff, Sariah's vessel skimming beside them, Leary at the prow wrapped in Jonah's red scarf. The trawlers followed, bells clanging. Fog ribboned the sea. The point loomed like a tooth. Current shears southeast, Jonah shouted. One pass. Sariah's coat unfolded into a harness of light. Stay with the ropes, she told Jonah. Keep her safe. Leary squeezed his shoulder. We can do this, she said, and slipped into the water. Sariah followed, a streak of light. Jonah stood at the world's edge, hands on the line, feeling every tug. The trawler's engines coughed closer. A grappling hook clanged off the skiff's side, bit and held. Jonah heaved. The hook dug deeper. He chopped through the rope just as a swell lifted them. The hook whipped back and caught his forearm. Pain flared. He kept his grip. Below, the line shook. Once, twice, the signal for ascent. The anchor stone broke the surface in Sariah's arms, veined with light. Leary surfaced beside her, cheeks flushed, gill lines fluttering. Another swell, trawlers looming. Jonah dragged the prize into the boat, blood slicking the wood. Sariah vaulted aboard. A translucent shield unfurled from her palm and blossomed over the skiff as a harpoon struck. Skittered sideways. Fog swallowed the rest. The shield collapsed. The skiff surged free. They did not speak until the lighthouse rose below them and the trawlers sulked back to argue with treaty men. In the kitchen, bandage on Jonah's arm, Leary fell asleep with her head on his shoulder. Sariah watched them. Your blood is on our stone, she said softly. She held out the crystalline heart they had raised. Close, Jonah saw thread-like filaments within, looping and crossing. Sariah smiled, fierce and relieved. You raised my daughter, she said, and then in her own language first and then in his. Now you are tied to me. I don't understand, Jonah said. Sariah touched the edge of the stone. A filament unspooled, slender as a hair and warm as breath. It brushed Jonah's wrist and settled there, sinking into skin like a promise. Among my people, she said, care is a cord. The one who shelters a child shares in the child's fate. We call it kin binding. It doesn't steal a child from a mother, or a mother from a home. It makes a larger home. So you're not here to take her away, Jonah murmured. I am here to add you both to our story, Sariah said. If you will have us. Jonah looked at the humble room, the cracked teapot, the tied charts, the boots by the door, and then at the two beings who had remade his life. He felt the filaments pulse against his wrist, measured and calm. Sighed the sea breathed. I will. Morning came blue. On the pier, the townsfolk watched as Sariah's ship rose, then settled again in the kelp beds, as if to say, we are neighbors now. Leary ran ahead with a kite she had sewn from old sailcloth. Jonah and Sariah followed. Family, Leary said, handing them each a string. The kite leapt. The cord bit Jonah's palm. He grinned into the wind, bound and freer than he had ever been. The storm had passed, leaving only the soft hiss of waves against the rocks. Jonah sat in the lighthouse kitchen, his arm bandaged, while Leary slept against his shoulder. Sariah stood across from him, holding the glowing anchor stone. You bled for her, she said, her voice low but steady. Our stone carries your mark now. Among my people, that cannot be undone. Jonah frowned. What does it mean? Sariah stepped closer. The stone shimmered, its filaments reaching toward him like living threads. One brushed his wrist, sinking gently into his skin with a warm pulse. It means you are bound to us, she whispered. Then, smiling for the first time, she added, You raised my daughter. Now you are tied to me. Jonah looked at the sleeping girl, at the woman who had crossed stars to find her, and then at the home he had thought was his alone. A home that suddenly felt too small for what was unfolding. So you're not here to take her away, he said. Sariah shook her head. No. I am here to add you to her story and mine. Outside, dawn broke over the sea, painting the horizon in silver and gold. Leary stirred and opened her eyes, smiling at both of them. Family, she whispered. Jonah rose, wrapping an arm around the girl. Sariah stepped beside them, her presence strong yet gentle. Together they walked toward the light of a new day. The gulls wheeled overhead, the ship rested in the bay, and for the first time in years, Jonah felt he wasn't alone. He was bound and freer than he had ever been.